I'm back. I am back. A dream come true every time. Practice makes perfect, but the beauty of arena shooters, and there is something to be learned. Oh, I know this video. I like it. Yeah, I haven't watched this video yet. And also, I don't even think practice makes perfect. And in theory, it makes sense, but it's perfect practice makes perfect. But then you run the risk of playing too perfectly, which might sound like, oh, that's good, but it's not. It's not, because you expect people to play perfectly as well. Anyways, let's get into this video, and let's watch it. So this is The State of Movement Shooters by FUNKe. He's a pretty big channel. I do recommend checking him out. He has really good videos. I love this guy. And I didn't know he had the video out, otherwise I would have watched it. So let's get right into it.
Beat the Halo demo. Not bad, soldier, not bad at all. But are you ready to take the next step in the full version of Halo?
The Halo Combat Evolved trial is something I used to play every day after school with my older brother. Blood Gulch was the only multiplayer map, so we jump on land with the other kids at school, and there was a lot of screen peeking, a lot of bullshit, but most importantly, the game got me hooked on first.
Yeah, I think a lot of people went through the screen peeking phase of when they're in school and they're on their computers and they're accessing the restricted file server and they're like, "Oh, we're going to play some Halo. We're elite hackers. We're going to own." Yeah, I think a lot of people went through that time period.
Person shooters. It's also, incidentally, a good example of some of the most important elements in every FPS game. Strategy, and mobility, and maybe graphics or something. I don't know. You can take to the mountain.
Yeah, graphics are a big part. Ironically, I don't think he realized the impact of that statement. Graphics are a huge part of a competitive shooter. Imagine a competitive shooter where you just can't see. Like, everything's so muddled in terms of graphics.
Right, and stealthily snipe for kills. Or you can fucking mow everyone down in a ghost until your older brother steals it from you. These two elements coexist and rely on each other to create a fun experience. However, every game finds their own balance of strategy and mobility.
Only if you have more than 20 years? Oh yeah, if you're older than 20, yeah. Yeah. Oh.
Rainbow Six Siege, for example, puts heavy focus on the tactical elements of gameplay. Setting traps, creating openings, verbally abusing Tachanka for picking Tachanka.
Yep.
Our Lord Tachanka coming in clutch.
And while there's important elements like rappelling on buildings, for the most part, mobility won't be playing too large of a role in the average fire.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good statement. However, I think it depends on your definition of mobility. I think if you're rappelling and you're fighting someone, I would consider that a mobile fight, right? Now, maybe someone who would disagree with that would say, no, it's not. But what do you define as mobility, right? Mobility is something you use to get around the map. So that could just be holding W key. Now, is it intense mobility? Probably not. Probably not. I think a lot of people just assume it's on the extreme end of things.
Fight. Contrast this with a game like Quake Champions, where your mobility is often a deciding factor on the pacing of an encounter. With enough speed and map memory, you can grab the big armor packs and tank up, and just be an all-around douche. You can initiate every fight, and if necessary, escape on low health without dying.
Yeah. Hey, when did this video come out? 2019. Okay. So he wasn't around for when Doom first came out, and how stupid of a character he was. He was so broken on release. A lot of people don't even remember the 1-2 punch bug. Oh my god.
Equally, if not more important than your gunplay. So we have two titles with vastly different gameplay.
A lot of higher level people will always say work on your movement first, and it's for a very good reason. If you can't move around efficiently, effectively, and optimally, you're gonna lose.
And yet Quake Champions, like many of its predecessors, is struggling to maintain relevancy.
Yeah, it's because the game is shit. It's because it sucks. I'm sorry. That's the reason.
Is it so difficult for movement games to sell? Champions seeks to bridge the casual...
Listen, I've talked about it before. It seems like this is the only reoccurring theme on my channel at this point. The reason it failed to sell was because it wasn't marketed right. You don't market a game as a hardcore, ultra-competitive shooter because that alienates the casual audience. And on top of all the bugs and all that, I still don't think it would have done well since they marketed it that way.
competitive gap by turning its mechanics into class skills. B-hopping, air strafing, double jumping, all now unique champion abilities. Unlike its ancestor games where everyone has access to an even field of mechanics, now there's counterplay which dilutes the raw skill of every matchup. Additionally, the game runs on Saber Engine trying to imitate id Tech, which means instead of a half-decent engine, you get stuff like this.
Damage exchange.
That's alright, that's fine. It's only $1 million tournament. It was probably a fluke anyways.
Yep.
But there's the drop onto the armor, but Cooler was kind of waiting for it.
Yeah, that seems fine to me.
No, he's right. That was entirely intended. What he doesn't realize is the developers intended for Rockets to have an RNG dice roll mechanic. You know, they wanted to go back to their roots of it being a D&D tabletop game. And I think that's pretty well told in that clip right there.
Same time, it's a hard sell for new players. Despite a class system, it's still intended for high-level play, and if you're inexperienced, you'll inevitably find yourself being curb-stomped on every step of the Penrose stairs.
Yeah,
Penrose stairs are infinite, by the way. The result of all this is a more accessible Quake title, but a divisive one that doesn't really strike a chord with any audience enough to retain them. Why can't movement games sell? Number one, it has to resonate with a broad enough amount of players to have staying power.
Sky Noon
is to the FPS genre like Smash is to the fighting genre.
What is Sky Noon?
It takes its own liberties on the formula, but makes for a really engaging party game.
Okay.
To further connect the two, Sky Noon, in my opinion, feels like a spiritual successor to TF2's Smash Brothers mod. The objective is to knock your opponent out of the zone, and with the addition of grappling hooks and objectives, it's really fast. Oh my god! Guns have this poopy
what the heck was? What is
that
this?
makes them fun as heck to shoot.
What?
And items give you an array of recovery options, so you aren't completely boned if you get hit.
Dude, this is like Space CTF, but on crack. This is Space CTF on crack.
All sounds fun on paper. It plays fun in practice.
Yeah.
So why then does it have less all-time players than I have Twitch?
Well, because it's an indie game that had no marketing, probably. It probably fucking had zero marketing, right? And I think that's why a lot of games die, is they're not marketed correctly. And I'm not some marketing guru. I can't say I'm Ty Lopez. I'm not in my garage selling cars. What I'm trying to say is I'm not a marketing genius here, right? And to a degree, right? You have to be a marketing, you have to know a little bit about marketing. And anyone can have ideas about marketing. And I think it's fair to say that marketing is something that can be more, I guess, simple to some than others, because it just requires a lot of common sense and a lot of common knowledge. And maybe I'm wrong on that. You know what? I'll be the first to say. I'll put my hand on a Bible and I'll say I am wrong. However, I think games just aren't marketed properly, right? And some games get no marketing at all. And it's like, oh my gosh, why did my game die? I got no marketing or incorrect marketing. No wonder people didn't try my game. And it's like, what? It's like, what?
Subscribers. That's kind of impressive. Other than a short-form tutorial, there's no single player, and without the luxury of a free-to-play model, it's hard to justify the purchase when the servers are so empty. Skynet.
And on top of that, it's like people like to say all these reasons as to why it could fail. And again, I think it comes down to something as simple as marketed incorrectly. I think it's marketed incorrectly. No marketing, no success. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's why no one knew about Quake Champions before E3, and it was at a lot of people don't know that Quake Champions was at QuakeCon 2015 or 2015 or 2016. And a lot of people don't know that. And I'm sure there's footage of it out there, but it was never marketed, and it's still not marketed. 2016, yeah.
And more like nice room because it's almost empty. It needs a platform of exposure to reach an audience. That means advertisement, coverage, etc.
Yeah.
Lawbreakers had exposure, but it was like the middle child of the genre. There wasn't anything wrong with it, but it didn't have anything to make it stand out.
Yeah.
Futuristic sci-fi shooters were out of season when it rolled around. If you want your movement game to sell, number 3, you need to...
I think Lawbreakers was also just a meme, too. Like, Cliff Bleszinski dug himself a hole early on by saying it's not Overwatch and it's going to be a direct competitor to Overwatch. And it's sold as a hardcore shooter. Excuse me? Overwatch is not a hardcore shooter, so why are you making Lawbreakers a hardcore shooter? It's like, what are you doing, Cliffy B? What are you doing?
for something new or do what's been done.
Lawbreakers
even
was
better.
cool. I really
Dirty
loved
Bomb
that.
was
Yeah.
dope as hell. This came out in 2015, so the
Yeah.
crash shooter craze hadn't taken off yet either. It had much more toned down mobility compared to the other examples, the extent of which being a
Dirty
few
Bomb
wall
was
jumps
great.
and sprinting. On the other hand, this made for a pretty cool middle ground between
Yeah.
your mechanical games like CS:GO and your momentum games like Quake Live.
Yeah.
Just having a single wall jump opened up a lot of routing options.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them being intuitive ones anybody could figure out. Some of them being, excuse me, what? Using your surroundings as a part of your strategy is what makes these mobility options so cool.
Yeah.
So it's a shame that the release was followed by 4 years of skimpy content updates and questionable at best balance philosophies.
See, but a lot of people don't realize is when when Dirty Bomb was out, it was under who was it? It was one of like the free-to-play MMO publishers that like really likes to monetize their games heavily. And Dirty Bomb was a really sick game, but it was ultimately hindered by its publisher. And I think a lot of games fall to this publisher trap as well.
Fuck the shotguns in this game. Fuck the snipers in this game. Fuck
Yep.
the shotguns and snipers in any game ever, but especially in this one. Number 4,
Oh,
it needs
jeez.
long-term support through good balance and fun additions. Tribes Ascend, haha, just kidding, Paladins initially struggled for many of the same reasons Lawbreakers did.
Yeah.
But unlike Clip Blazinski, Hi-Rez was willing to stick this one out and keep supporting the game.
Mhm.
It's changed a lot over
And
the last
it's really
few years
good.
of development, and ironically,
A lot of people meme on me for saying this, but Paladins is really good. In fact, one of my earliest videos that I put up on here was Paladins gameplay. And I loved Paladins. Now, would I ever compete in Paladins? Probably not. The game was casual as it was casual as heck. It really was. And it's like, wow, they really have come a long way. Because I remember playing the alpha for this game, or closed beta, or something like that.
part of this involved heavily nerfing the mobility across all champions.
Mhm.
Early on, vertical movement was hyper-exploitable, and while on
Yeah.
its own that's not necessarily a bad thing, the game itself is already watered down with MOBA designs like huge hitboxes and card builds, so they elected
Yep.
to dial this mobility back and leave whatever remained as horizontal focused, save for a few exceptions. And while movement still plays a large role in the game's balance, flanking options have been highly neutered. What remains of movement is short bursts and safe, and even the interesting abilities the game has to offer are hard to appreciate when the game is still so forgiving with its aim. Despite this, Paladins managed to
That's
climb
true.
its way up to a respectable player base.
And
While
see-
it may not be high
While Quake Champions got to this point, I would have loved for it to stay there. That shows there's interest, at least as much interest in the game as Paladins. And I think that's really important to note and to really understand, is that there's interest for these games. People act like there's zero interest. No, there's a good market share for these games. It's just they don't know how to establish a market for it.
on the top of Steam charts, the fact that it lands on this list at all may as well be a sign of moderate success in
Yeah.
itself.
And
Overwatch
you got to
with
keep in
every-
mind, if a game reaches 10,000 players, that's successful. That's like 0.1% of games ever get to that far.
marketing tactic it needed. It offered something new. It had a large platform of exposure, and it was appealing to both inexperienced players and competitive players.
Yeah.
But despite this acclaimed success, you'd find it difficult to not hear even the most devoted players passionately complain about the game. At one
Well, you
point,
complain
Genji-
about the game because you like it, right? You complain about it because you're so invested in it and you love it as a game. And I feel like that's something else that a lot of people don't understand, is just because you're complaining about it doesn't mean you don't like it. They equate complaining with hating.
You could dash at an edge and gain insane mobility.
I
It
missed
was
that.
tricky
I got really good at that trick, and they nerfed it, and I was so sad. They removed it, and it was such a fun trick to do.
to pull off. This made for a cool strategy,
Yeah.
and that's exactly why Blizzard removed it, because new players couldn't use it the same way an experienced one could.
Yep.
Each hero is intricately
That's true.
designed to be a one-size-fits-all solution to skill gaps. The
It's
most
true.
successful movement shooters are ones which minimize the skill needed to master said movement. In Quake Champions,
That's
to
pretty
rocket
true.
jump, you acquire a rocket launcher,
And you aim at the
fucking
ground and shoot.
yourself, and trade off one rocket plus your health for a brief boost in mobility. In Overwatch, you hit shift. This
And you
makes
fly.
mobility accessible and in a genius way actually sucks in new players by
Yeah.
convincing them that they can pull off the same crazy plays they saw on Reddit, which
Mhm.
ironically were not that impressive in the first place.
Yeah,
I think this
that's
was
pretty
a
true.
detriment, but there's a
That's
mass
pretty
market
true.
of players both on PC and console who want the thrill of these movements without having to master an engine to do so.
Mhm.
Overwatch was the answer to this market demand, and that's why despite its struggle with competitive play,
Mhm.
it retains a core player base.
Yeah.
Now I bet you're
Yeah.
wondering, what about TF2? And that's a stupid
Oh.
question.
Oh, I thought they were talking about Team Fortress 2 for a second.
It's an EA game and never
Yeah.
stood a chance. But you're also wondering, aren't those all multiplayer games?
Mhm,
And you'd be
they
right,
are.
that's an important distinction.
Oh, this is Doom
It's still
2016.
supposed to be
Okay.
found.
And Doom
came in like a
2016.
motherfucker. And while it's multi
That statement. That's gonna be in the thumbnail. It's gonna be like right here. Right up here, right above my name.
player mode is more deceased
God.
than a demon who had the misfortune of mistaking Doomslayer for a travel directory, it's proven that there's still a market for single-player FPS games.
Yeah.
If you think you've seen everything, sit down and watch a speed run of this game.
Oh, yeah,
Does
no, it's
clipping
crazy.
count as a movement mechanic? I don't know. I don't even know what's happening right now.
It's
My point
true.
is, I don't remember.
Quake or Doom speedruns, Doom 2016 speedruns are insane. They did essentially what happened with Half-Life 2 over the course of like 15 years and did it in a day. It is so broken.
Remember what my point was. Fuck, Eternal looks so goddamn cool. It has this grapple mechanic.
Mhm.
Alright, back on topic. I love movement. And yeah, I know it's ironic, which
Yeah,
is
it
why
is.
I want to see this design philosophy flourish in the industry. Complex mobility makes for more skill factors and
Yeah.
matches, compelling gameplay for impatient
true.
people like me, and I don't know, man, it's fun. Developers, if you're watching, build on your movement just as much as you do your gunplay.
Mhm.
Players, if you're watching,
Stop using the fucking shotgun.
That's it. That's it. That's the video. That's the YouTube content for the day. Twitch.tv/xbiotv, Twitch.tv/xbiotv, Twitch.tv/xbiotv. Yeah, I love FUNKe. It's a great video. He brings up some really good points. I think ultimately people aren't not into movement shooters. They're into good marketing, right? If a game is marketed good, that's going to attract even the most casual of players. That's going to attract even the most casual of players. But sadly, Quake Champions and a lot of other arena FPS games suffer from really poor marketing. And the marketing they do get only resonate within its own community.